Sexy.
It's recording?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
We do whatever we want whenever we want it.
All right. What's up, everybody? This is your host, Jackson Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Welcome Mentality Podcast. This week in the studio, I sit across from the man who can deadlift 750 pounds, Alec Winter. Thank you for joining me, bro.
That was a great intro, dude. A really good intro. I cannot deadlift 750, by the way. I was curious if it was believable enough and whether or not you were going to eat it up, and you totally did. I love it.
Yeah, no doubt. But seriously, dude, I'm glad to be sitting across from you. Appreciate the coffee, and thanks for sharing this morning with me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Like I said, the day started off slow, but I'm ready to ramp things up in today's little podcast.
Yeah, let's get right to it. So, tell me a little bit about your background, where the journey began. I know Grand Haven, Michigan, big town.
Yeah, real big.
Big dreams.
Big town, big dreams. No, very small town. Maybe 10,000 people when I was growing up. And had a pretty stable home, like regular middle-class individual. Both my parents were entrepreneurs. Mom was a chiropractor, had her own office. Dad was a contractor and had his own contractor business, building houses for the most part. So relatively stable home environment. Things went a little weird later with them getting divorced, but then I went off to college while that shit was happening. Mm-hmm. And I just went through the motions in regards to going to college. You know, I went in wanting to be a plastic surgeon just to work on boobs, like totally vain, vain. And I think it was kind of a joke for me, like I had an idea of what success looked like, but I didn't know what it was going to look like for me. So I just kind of went with what seemed to make sense and what had a little bit of vanity to it.
Right.
Then I got there and, biology was boring. Physiology was great, but moved on to business, because I'm just like, all right, well, that's what everybody does. So I'll just go into that. I don't like this as much as I thought I would. And didn't like that either, but actually fell in love with economics of all things.
Really?
Yeah, so kind of a weird thing to fall in love with, but I really liked it. I really did, and I dove in hard.
What did you like about it?
I just liked and let me rephrase this. I didn't like it until halfway through all of my econ courses, but I just liked the math behind it. I liked the idea that there was a way to measure changes on a societal level. Like, that was kind of cool. And what I liked about economics was also the sociology behind some of the decisions and like what goes into these metrics and these equations, so it's the study of humans that I really liked, and sociology played a role into that. So if you can combine the two, that would be what I was primarily interested in. And then it really didn't hit home, and I really didn't dive in until my senior year when I learned about heterodox economics, because in the classes that I was in, Econ 101, 201, 301, 401, as you go up, you learn about the study of the economy and everything that is involved with it. And they're teaching it to you, and they called it Keynesian economics, right? And I just thought, this is economics. Like, this is what it is. But then I went to this heterodox economics class on a whim, like just picked it because I had to fill my schedule. And all of a sudden there's Austrian economics and all these other theories. And I'm like, oh my God, no wonder this stuff didn't make sense to me. Like, I liked it and it was cool, but it didn't quite fit right in what I was and how I viewed the world. And then I find out there's, 5 other theories and schools of thought. So it was absolutely mind blowing.
That's really interesting, because I got my degree in economics, and I can't say that I share the same interest. So it's cool. It's actually cool to hear you talk about why you enjoyed it and some of the complexities that I never even was aware of.
I think it's the psychology and the sociology behind it that I really like. Like, Freakonomics was kind of like that first little intro into there's a lot more to economics than just these numbers.
Right.
But how did you get involved? Like, what was the inspiration behind that? You freaking nerd.
Yeah, dude. I think, I don't know if it's similar to you, but I went into college thinking I was going to take the pre-med route, become some sort of physician, really because that was just the path that kind of like made sense to me at the time.
And it makes the most money at that.
Right.
That's what you think makes a lot of money.
Yeah. I'll be curious after I give my little spiel to hear like, why you chose the plastic surgery realm, more so from the standpoint of like, you say going through the motions, but it's like the pre-med track and medical school and residency and fellowship, like that is not a path that you can really go through the motions on.
True.
For me, I actually was like, what do you want to study? Like, the joke was my mom would always say, hey, you have chicken scratch handwriting, like you'd be a great doctor. And so like naturally it was like, okay, well, I guess like that's what I'm going to do. And I actually got like manhandled by freshman year biology.
Oh,
and
really?
So that was my, I was playing football, was a freshman, grades weren't awesome. And so after that happened, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna not going to go the pre-med route. Like, I'm going to go for business school.
Well, my only other sport was drinking. So the fact that you had to do like an actual sport that I'm sure is taking at least 4 hours of your day, I would assume.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like that's insane.
Yeah, it's a full-time job. I mean, because you get up for weights and then you go to class and then you've got the training room before practice and then you go through meetings and you have practice and you have study hall. Like, we definitely went through all the hours that are poured into just like the bare minimum for playing a college sport, and it's the equivalent to a full-time job. And then if you're somebody who's doing extra to try to really excel, then for sure you're spending a lot of your time on that. So econ honestly was like, when I decided I wasn't going to go pre-med, it was like, okay, well, what's going to be the next best option that's going to give me a lot of opportunity from the standpoint of like, this looks good on a resume and will allow me to like pick a job that I want. And so, yeah, I just did my best in the econ classes because I knew that's what was going to help me get a degree ultimately. It wasn't like, oh, I'm really interested in this. And I had some great professors. One of them, like her name, Dr. Wheaton, she was awesome. And like that made the experience positive. But the subject matter, I was like, please help.
It's a little dry.
Yeah. But so to ask you that question, like the kind of going through the motions mindset that you had going into college, coming from the background of like two parents who were entrepreneurs and undoubtedly had to work hard to like build their businesses. I mean, what did you think you were going to do? Like, how did you think you were just going to kind of float through that coursework?
Yeah, I just didn't know what I wanted. I really didn't. And it seemed like it was a good idea. That's pretty much it, man. Like, I'll be honest, it was a psychological operation. I watched Nip Tuck all of their seasons when I shouldn't have, and I'm like, yeah, I definitely want this life. You know what I mean? Like, looking at, I think one of the primary characters, it's been years since I've watched it. I think Christian was like the main one. He was like the playboy guy.
Right.
You know? And I'm like, that's totally me.
Right.
You know? So
make
like,
money.
Yeah, make money.
Beautiful women, etc.
Beautiful women, have a Ferrari, and I got the beautiful woman already. I'm working on the Ferrari, but you know, you can achieve it by other means. And I think I just like the first time I experienced passion was in the middle of college when I started that first business that we briefly talked about. And so
buy anything now? Is that deliver anything now?
There you go. Good memory again. Yeah. Call Dan. And so that's what like first got me like really fired
And
up.
that was at 19, right?
That was at 19. Yes. Cause it was sophomore year that I started it. Junior year, I was running it. Yep. So about 19 there.
And before we get into that, like, do you remember as a kid having any sort of like, hey, Alec, what do you want to be when you grow up, buddy? Like, do you remember having those conversations like people want to be firefighter or whatever? Like, did you have that type of thing that you wanted to do when you were a kid?
The thing that I wanted to do when I was a kid was be a pilot.
Okay.
And even when they made you do those stupid tests in high school that are like, what should you be? And you answer like 100 questions. And mine was like transportation specialist. And then they gave like three different things. It was pilot. it was pilot, bus driver, like, you know, and a bunch of other random stuff. And I was just like, well, now that it's telling me to do it, I don't want to do it. You know?
Of course not. Why,
yeah. I mean, I was always like, I had issues with authority. I still do. That's why I work for myself. And so anytime somebody gave me a suggestion that came from my higher up in any way, shape, or form, I'm like, you know what, you.
Yeah,
like,
I don't
on
want
to
do
the
it.
next thing.
Right. So then, yeah, let's talk about Deliver Anything Now. So you're 19, and clearly you see there's a gap in the market for something, or you're trying to solve a problem.
Nope.
All right.
Not at all.
Talk to me. So how did that occur?
Yeah, so it was originally actually my girlfriend at the time had this idea. And it was to basically get coffee to sorority girls on campus. And I'm like, that makes sense, you know? So I guess, I mean, a little bit, what you're saying is true, but I wanted to be a little facetious in the sense that it was somebody else's idea.
And you weren't thinking of it that way.
Yeah, and I wasn't. I didn't have that frame of mind yet. I don't have the now business analytical mind to go in and immediately see processes and a gap in the market and everything that I could improve. I didn't have that yet.
Right.
So it was just, you know, this is a good idea. And then I asked her, I kept talking to her about it, I was kind of bugging her about it because like it's her idea. I didn't feel like I could just take it, but I'm like, you know, maybe let's do something with this, you know? And then we broke up and I still let her know, I'm like, all right, listen, if you don't want to do anything, like I'm just going to go do this. And she's like, well, that's kind of rude, like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing anything. So just, I'm going to go do it. I don't care anymore. And then some random guy, because I don't even remember I don't think I'd even named the company yet, but I think I had reached out to somebody who had already had Deliver Anything Now as like the name, and they were based in Grand Rapids. I'm in East Lansing. It's like an hour-long drive. And somehow I think we got a hold of each other on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
and I hit them up and I'm like, hey, this is cool. You know, I'm looking for a little advice or infrastructure. Like, I don't know what's going on. And by the way, I said it in college term. It didn't sound that cool. And I'm just like, hey, what are you guys doing? And how do I do it too?
Right.
So I had a meeting with them at a Starbucks on the highway, like halfway in between. And we started talking, and they're like, yeah, we're trying to do this in Grand Rapids. And I'm like, all right, well, let me run the East Lansing division. Like, you guys already have a name and stuff figured out. So then I started it in East Lansing. Things were running smoothly. But then those guys were not like doing anything. Like, they had full-time jobs at banks, you know what I mean? And they
Right.
were 30, I think they were 35 and like 45.
They weren't 19-year-old college
Exactly.
students.
And they just saw me, a hungry kid that was like, you know, social chair of his fraternity, like kind of seemed kind of cool. And they're like, all right, whatever. Like, it's not going to hurt us. So,
Right.
but I really ran with it. And focused on it for, well, it was sophomore year, junior year, and then I ended up selling some of the contracts that I had in there to be done. And it actually, ironically, it was to spend more time with my current girlfriend during that like period. So I
Yeah.
literally quit the business so that I could like have a girlfriend. I guess it was so silly looking back.
So what started off as an idea to essentially deliver coffee to sorority girls, like how did that evolve? And do you remember facing challenges going through that process?
Big time, big time. So the first thing was me trying to create like a platform, right? And, oh, this is just a good idea, so people are going to come to me. I try to put out flyers. Nobody would buy. I had one of my fraternity brothers who was like into social media marketing at the time, like very early stages. And I didn't really like what he was doing, but I let him post a little bit, paid him like $200 a month or something.
Right.
And nothing was really hitting, and I wasn't getting the demand that I wanted. I'm like, but this is a good idea. Like, why don't people want to buy it? And it's like, oh, you got to market and advertise. But I still didn't have the idea to go and do that. I had my website up. It was somewhat functional. So instead, what I did is I went, okay, well, people are already buying these things. They just need to know that it's available. So instead, what I went to do is go to these individual businesses where I figured people would want to be buying or getting things delivered from, and I worked out a business deal with them. And I created a contract to the rights to deliver for their business. So the first one was restaurants that didn't have delivery, which in a college town, if you're, people don't have cars, you have to be able to deliver to your consumer.
And you went to Michigan State.
That's right.
So is that a college town? Is there
time.
much delivery there? I have
time.
like a couple friends who went there, but I don't know anything about East
Michigan
Lansing.
State's a big school. I think when I was there was 50,000 people. And
Okay.
then, so you have East Lansing, it's a 1.5 mile radius. There's 50,000 people there, like maybe 2 mile radius.
Wow.
And then, but then there's the northern part of it that there's like all the administration for the school is going to be living up there. There's plenty of suburbs up there. And then a 5-minute drive west is Lansing, the capital of I almost said the U.S. of Michigan. And then east of that, or excuse me, east of East Lansing is Okemos, which is another big suburbia town.
Okay.
So there was room there. And then so then I went and talked to some of the local grocery stores because I figured these people might want groceries delivered. All these houses are over $600,000, which at the time, that might not be much now, but at the time that was a mansion. Inflation, man.
Dude,
Just a little side note there.
Yeah.
So tried to do some flyers with the neighborhoods, but then, like I said, went directly to the businesses that either didn't have delivery or needed a better delivery service. Because a lot of times what they also have is a mom and pop pizza shop will have a delivery person, but they don't make enough money.
Right.
And so they're inconsistent. Some of the deliveries won't make it out. So what I was able to do was create a delivery person. And in the beginning, it was just me.
Yeah.
18 hours a day, crazy stuff. But I would get calls from all of these different restaurants or coffee shops, and then I would just come through. It's the Uber Eats model. So I would come through, I'd pick them all up, and then go and deliver them all and just try to make it timely.
And it was just you.
It was just me in the beginning. Yeah, for quite some time. Then I hired one of my buddies, and he did a really good job. Shout out to Spencer Rowe. He crushed it for me. We were both social chairs of the fraternity, so like we were just we were buddies living together and trying to crush it together. I tried to hire my first employee that wasn't a friend, and he only had a bike. That was just
Difficult.
That was just a shit show. It didn't last very long. And then I had this brilliant idea. So Thursday through Saturday, we're throwing parties at the fraternity. And in every semester, we have a group of pledges that come in, and they're supposed to do exactly what we want them to all the time. So
I know where this is going.
Yep. So I'm like, oh, this is a great idea. And on that Thursday through Saturday, they're not allowed to party. Well, they can go to the party, but they can't drink because there are, well, some of them anyways, they are safe rides.
Right.
So it makes sure that everybody gets around to where they want to go. Nobody's drunk driving. Like,
Right.
It's just a really good check and balance, honestly. But they're driving around all night, and I'm like, oh, well, these are the big delivery days. So I became pledge educator next. and I took over as pledge educator so that I could tell the pledges what to do.
Wow.
Yep.
Free labor. Exactly. That seems like it's got to be some sort of like hazing or some sort
yeah, there's
probably not okay, but fine.
This should not be released. No, I think we're far enough away. I think we're okay.
Yeah.
And I think all the guys, anyways, the pledges, fraternity brothers, it's a good story to tell.
For sure.
So then I, through Thursday through Saturday, and then some of them I would use them as free labor, and then the ones that were good I would pay throughout the rest of the week. But I was pledge educator, so I didn't necessarily have to. And so it was like a total profit system. I let them keep the tips though.
Yeah.
So there was that portion. But what I did is I charged a $3 fee.
Okay.
And it was put to the restaurant, and it was up to them whether or not they wanted to charge it to the consumer. Just as long as I got in, I would come once a week and just collect the check and all of the tips, and then distribute it to everybody, and then myself. So that was a big problem solver, and that worked for a good amount of time. But then summertime, I'm running around again, trying to find new employees. So those were the big struggles, is just finding good labor, which is still a struggle today, even with my current venture, and then trying to make myself do everything, and then marketing and advertising were the big ones. And so that was my first understanding of trying to find market demand and then also create it through marketing and advertising.
Dude, it's really cool to like hear that story and think about myself as like a 19, 20-year-old and just think like, I wasn't thinking about starting a business at that point in time, but like to really think about starting a business and the operations and the paying of the employees and like the way that you did all that at that age, like it's impressive. And, obviously there are plenty of entrepreneurs and people who do that, but I always enjoy hearing like kind of the minute details of like that process because it's impressive.
Well, to be honest, I didn't think about it as a business. I saw this as a way to make money.
Right.
Like I was getting to a point where, so I kind of touched on it a second ago, but parents were getting divorced while I was in college. Money was a lot tighter. I had the student loans, and I think you'd get like an extra $1,000 like every semester, maybe $2,000. So that would hang, that's going to go immediately to dates, a little bit of gas money, for the moped, and then like just odds and ends stuff. And so really, I just never really saw it as like I'm building a business. It was more like, how do I make money so that I can do the things that I want?
Right.
Like I want to be able to take girls on dates. Like I don't want money to be a problem.
Right.
And so this seems to be the way that, like, I don't know, it was just so automatic for me. Like it was like, we're doing this, and there was no time to think or evaluate that this was a business. I think I once tried to do a business plan, but I've still never really made a business plan ever for any of my companies. So
yeah. And so at what point did you, I guess you sold out of it or sold part of it?
Yeah. So what I did when I brought these restaurants, coffee shops, etc. in is, as long as they weren't big like Whole Foods or Meijer, I created the rights to deliver and made them sign the contract. So the rights to deliver for their business.
Was this before like GoPuff and a lot of these?
Oh yeah, it was before all that. So Postmates had started. Like I didn't find out about Postmates until I had already started the business, and it was just starting.
Wow.
It was like trialing in Chicago.
Okay.
And I think Chicago and New York.
Okay.
And I didn't even know about it, but another guy that was interested in trying to run the business with me had brought it up to me. Another fraternity brother.
Yeah.
And then actually I just popped in my head, so I got to talk about it. That guy at the time actually knew the guy who was the like hub director or like area director for Uber, and he was trying to work with Uber to get them to deliver my food and like in my coffee. And I was like, no, that's stupid. They won't do that. Yeah. So like, I think they
fumbled the bag.
Yeah, fumbled the bag big time, buddy. And yeah, I just didn't think it was a good idea, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
But that's how I know I just didn't deserve that business. But yeah, so created the rights to deliver for these businesses. Some of them were in perpetuity, which was so silly at the time. Mm-hmm. None of that I think was held up, but the other ones were all a year and 2 years at a time. Mm-hmm. And so there was another competitor, and I can't remember the name of them anymore, but they were in the city next to me. And so then I just took the contracts, the rights to deliver for those businesses, and moved them over. And then a couple of them, I really fumbled the bag, and I kind of hurt relationships because either the other company didn't want these contracts, or I kind of forgot about them, or they weren't delivering enough. And then all of a sudden they're calling me, and I'm just not answering.
Right.
So huge business mistakes on that one. I actually hurt a good relationship of mine that I'd made with a business owner. But since then, I've totally rekindled that relationship. And every time I'm driving through East Lansing, I stop into Jonas To Go is the name of his business. If you're ever there, it's great. But I always stop in and shoot the shit with him for a little bit.
That's awesome, man. You learn so much throughout that process, and the ability to recognize that you burnt a bridge, but then go back and rebuild the bridge is a great experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was tough and it was needed. The other two big experiences that I had in the business that really made a huge impression on me were, one was my first client for a delivery. I think it was Spencer's Kitchen. And he was the first one that really like took a chance on it, and we had a good relationship, and he was my longest standing client up until the end. And it was because he was like 2 months behind on paying me. And that's like a lot. I mean, I think it was a couple $1,000s worth of deliveries and tips that also my employees and or pledges were trying to get a hold of. And it was, gosh, what was it? I think it was St. Patrick's Day of my junior year. And I was like, all right, this is enough. I need to go and collect. And so I went in just not thinking like it's a total nut house in there. It's a bar and like, food place. And I went up to him because he wanted me to make a delivery for him. And I was just like, yes, but like, I need to be paid, man. Like, it's been a long time. And like, I can't like keep pushing this off. And he was just like, he started to raise his voice with me a little bit. And I was just like, dude, I'm not asking you for money that's not mine. Like, I just want to get paid for what I've done. Like, I have people to pay. And looking back, I think he was struggling financially. But then he took me into his back office and he just yelled at me.
Yeah.
Like, he ripped me a new one. He's like, if you want this money, then this relationship is over and we're done working together. And I'm just like, I didn't know what to say. Like, I was starting to like my anxiety was like rising. Like, I was getting a little teary eyed because like this had never happened before. Yeah. Like, I was a brand new entrepreneur and I'm like, here's a scar forming.
Yeah.
And then he took the cash out of like his little safe that he had and he threw it down there. And he's like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And I took it out and I like walked out the back door and I started crying, dude. And I was just like, oh my God, like that was terrible. Like, I'm getting a little emotional just thinking about it right now. It's something that most people would need to go to therapy for.
Yeah. And
then the next one had a very similar situation with a guy that was referred by the Spencer Kitchen at Firehouse Subs. And I was working with that local franchisee there. And he had done the same thing. He was starting to fall behind. The sub shop like wasn't doing as good. We were still making like 5 to 10 deliveries a day, but that's not enough for a franchise.
Right.
And so he just stopped paying, and then he started ignoring my calls. And eventually, that's how I learned out about small claims court. So I took him to court, which is just basically mediation. You don't ever see a magistrate or anything like that. But going through that process puts a little hair on your chest and really makes you have to sack up. And from those meetings where I got yelled at and then I had to go to court, it created anxiety around business for me. Yeah. And so every time I would walk in to do a sales, either do a sales call or go in to do an in-person sales meeting, I would absolutely have a full-blown panic attack every single time.
Really?
Every single time. And it wasn't going to stop me, but every time I go in, I'm literally like, I'm sweating profusely. I'm not thinking straight, and I'm just trying to work through because I know it'll go away. I just have to get through this wave. And that was about I'd say a 4 or 5 year battle of just like having to undo that. Actually, probably longer because it wasn't until halfway through this venture. So if that's 15 and I didn't really figure it out until this one.
Wow.
I mean, it was 2020 and 2021 that I finally got like completely rid of it.
Wow, dude. Yeah. It's interesting you say that because I was going to ask you for that venture specifically, if going into it there was any fear, because based on everything you've said, it's kind of interesting because it doesn't sound like you viewed it as much as like, oh, this is a business, this is some big thing I'm doing. It was just like, I need to make some money. Yep. But now, you having said you dealt with some kind of anxiety inducing experiences, and now having said it's been several years that you've been working through it, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I'm curious, in starting other ventures, if you've been like, man, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to go through that kind of process again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It scared the living crap out of me for sales. So when I went into my next venture, the only thing I had to do was sales.
Which was?
That was Musa.
Okay.
At the time, we renamed it. It was originally 360 Foundry, and it was creating 360 videos in virtual or digital actuality for music festivals, real estate. You may have seen things like Matterport, Google Street View. It was that for, different things. Probably the coolest one was like the music festivals. We did Sound on Sound Fest here in Austin. I don't even know if that's still a thing, but it used to be a pretty cool one. And I got to see, just a quick little side note, I got to see all the sweetest, like the coolest artists, like Purity Ring, like in the press box or whatever, like right on stage with them. It was so cool.
That is sick.
But yeah, so all I had to do for that was sales basically, and what I would end up doing is marketing in order to stay away from sales. So I was really heavily avoiding it because I wouldn't know what to say. I wouldn't know how to keep my cool. I didn't know how to I didn't know how to problem solve. I just knew how to try and get them to buy my stuff. And it was a very inorganic approach, and it was with clammy hands. You know what I mean? And me trying to fight through.
Just a miserable experience.
Yeah, I could. When you're having an anxiety, you can't think. You know what I mean? And so I'm trying to keep my cool and like pretend like nothing's happening. But it reminds me of the first time like I had to give like a huge speech. You know what I mean? Like you black out for like the first 30 seconds. You don't know what's going on. You're just hoping that you made it through. You know? And so like that's what it was every single meeting. Yeah. So it was tough. Yeah, definitely built some wounds and scars there.
Right. So to go back to Deliver Anything Now, that venture ends. Was that upon graduation, or like, you know, when it came time for you to decide, okay, I'm done with college, it's time for me to really start my professional career outside of school? What was that transition like for you? You know, what did you jump into next?
No, so I actually got rid of the business and sold those contracts. I think it was senior year.
Okay.
And I had taken off a semester junior year to run the business full time.
Okay.
So that put me behind by a semester, but basically a full year because I still had some leftover credits that I needed to take care of. So that put me into my 5th year senior. And with that, I was really starting to get into economics again. Business was over. I wasn't thinking about things too much on that side of things, and things were being ironed out. I took a regular job like that summer. So there was I like moved from that, went back to school, like really focused on that. And then as soon as that was coming to a conclusion, I started to apply for other jobs. But I was very late for it. Like everybody was applying in November. I wasn't applying for jobs that I even thought I was going to get until, late winter, I would say.
Yeah. And what were you applying for? I mean,
I was applying for economic job, like economic econ analysis jobs. I was applying for recruiting jobs. I was applying to be consultants at like Deloitte and some of these other companies. Because I saw like my friends who were like, I saw a lot of friends who were doing, what were they? They were studying finance and they were studying something else, but they were getting these jobs at these big, the big 3 like accounting firms and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I should be able to get a job there.
Right.
I had good grades. Like there was nothing, wrong with my resume, but I was not getting any calls back. I was getting barely any interviews, and like 50% of the people that go out of college, you of course get the calls from the recruiting firms that are like, come recruit for us. It was like Tech Systems and
Insight Global.
Insight Global, yeah. And I was just like, yeah, I'll do that. And like I accepted a job because I didn't have any other options. Like there was nothing out there for me. And I was kind of surprised. I'm like, I'm smart. I know I'm doing it. If I can just get into the room and have a conversation with them, I think I'll be able to win them over. But I wasn't even getting that opportunity.
Was the entrepreneur thing on your mind at all? Or was it like, I'm going to take this path because it seems like this is what people are doing?
Yeah. So we were coming up on April of my super senior year. And I was talking to my friend, Yusuf, who was down here in Austin. And he was starting to get involved in this 360 stuff. And it was intriguing. And I'd already accepted this job offer. They sent me like their little welcome packet or whatever. I was gearing up to like start in middle of May, I think. And then me and Yusuf were talking, and he was just like, yeah, I think it's a pretty good idea. I'm like, I think it's a good idea too. Like, would you want to go in on this together? And he was just like, yeah, dude, absolutely. So we kind of divvied up the percentages. It was his idea, but I would be coming to help. So I'd have a smaller percentage. And I was like, yep. F it, like that's what we're doing. And then so had the awkward conversation with Tech Systems, and it's just like, hey, I'm not coming. They're like, can you send us back our welcome packet? I'm like, no. I've already worn the shirt. Screw off. Like, I'm not sending that back. And then so that would just, again, it was just like, it just seemed like the next natural step. I just knew I didn't want to go and work for a recruiting agency over in Detroit, Michigan. So it was the next logical thing to just go ahead and try this route.
And move to Austin.
Did
you know anything about Austin?
I knew nothing about Austin except for that my friend was here. I had visited it. I think it was sophomore year of college because my buddy Yusuf, he was my best friend at the time. So I had visited him once before. I think it was sophomore year of college. And even so, I didn't see much of Austin. I saw like campus area because he was going to UT. And I actually got arrested while I was down here for that. We'll get into that later.
Good. Yeah. Great.
Simple, silly stuff. But I had not really seen much. And so I just didn't care. Like, I didn't have the typical desires like I need to get out of this city and see the world, and I was just like, nope, this is just what's coming next.
Right.
And I was just kind of like flowing through life.
Man, again, interesting having different conversations with people. Some people have that exact feeling of like, I need to go see something different, but other people are like, oh, this is where my career is going to take me. You, it was like,
there was nothing going on up here.
I'm just going to float in the river.
There was nothing going on up here. But now that I'm like further down in life and I have a more esoteric approach to things, you come to realize like, Oh, that's exactly what you need to do in life is
Mhm.
like go down river and maybe just give it a little paddle here and
Right.
there to kind of steer you out of the way of the sticks and um, maybe pick up a good fish on the way, you know, but like you are just flowing and that's how you should live your life.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So come down, Austin, Musa. What was that experience like in a VR tech startup?
tough. I mean, I think we made 40 grand in like 9 months between two guys who are living in a 2-bedroom apartment, but we're sharing one room.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
so super, you know, tight space. We're sharing a bank account. We're sharing food. We're rationing food. You know, like we're being very conservative with our money because we didn't have any. I had sold my motorcycle to come down, which was like $2,700.
Right.
Other than that, my mom I think gave me like a couple $100, but any graduation money that I had gotten, I had already spent on a trip with my girlfriend, now wife, going to Denver, Colorado. Or no, actually, what was it? It was in Colorado, and I can't remember the name of one of the ski towns. Anyways, I'd already blown all that money, you know,
Right.
so I had like almost nothing to my name, and we were trying to stay lean.
Were your parents like, did they have any opinion that they shared with you on like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Or
So-
are you crazy? Or
At this point, I hadn't talked to my dad really in probably 3 or 4 years. And my mom had pretty much raised us anyways. My dad was great when we were younger, but as we got older and could start thinking for ourselves, it was just kind of like a natural separation in a way. And then
Yeah.
going through the divorce and separation, like there were some things that were said where we were just like, okay, I'm not going to talk to this guy anymore.
yeah.
So it was my mom, you know, and you know, my wife is my rock now, but like my mom was my rock back then for sure. And she just supported everything that I did, and she was always speaking life into what I was doing. She
That's
was
awesome.
always letting me know. She was praying over me. She supported every decision that I made. But I shared over time. I started sharing more and more with her, and I just realized what a good relationship was forming there.
That's great.
Yeah, so I'm very close with my mom, and she's been. She is what I think most men would want in a wife. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
she's just so supportive, like always there for me. And luckily, I found a wife that does the exact same thing. You know, but it was all my mom,
Yeah.
my mom supporting me through all of it, not knocking anything. And when I walked away from 360 Foundry, it was her basement that I was living in, and she didn't give a crap.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because, you know, you and I laughed when we first connected about the fact that, you know, my introduction to you was, you know, go from wine drunk and depressed to, you know, successful entrepreneur, whatever.
Yeah,
So I think it was 2017. You were living in your mom's basement
you got it.
and no job, drinking some barefoot Moscato, like
Yeah.
whatever. Like, so talk a little bit about that phase and like really trying to figure out like, okay, I know I'm intelligent. I know that I've built things that have been successful in the past. I've done great things. I have this resume, right? What am I doing in my mom's basement and what should I be doing? What do
Yeah.
I want to do?
I had lots. I've always had self-esteem. I did not have confidence at that time, though. So what you're just saying, I know I've got it. I know I'm smart. Not really.
Yeah.
You know, like I did not think that way. But I also like I'm intensely introspective, but I never really think about myself as being smart enough or being like capable enough. It's just like I'm just doing it.
Yeah.
So I've never had those thoughts. I didn't have them then. The thoughts that I had then were, you know, what is happening? What is going on right now? Because basically, girlfriend came down for Valentine's Day, and I'm out to dinner with her, and I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
And when you say this, you mean live in
Musa.
my mom's basement?
No,
Oh,
no, no.
Musa.
This is when I'm still in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
She came down to visit, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And she's just like, okay, what do you want to like? What? Well, okay, that's cool. Like, what do you want to do? I'm like, can you drive me home? And she's just like, yeah, for sure. Because she flew down, and I'm like, all right. So then we went back, and we literally packed up the car and left the next day.
Wow.
Drove up to Michigan, told my mom what was going on the way up. Didn't have any money, right? So slept at a rest stop, you know, halfway through the night, and then kept going in the morning. Got up there and moved into my mom's basement, and my mom with open arms, you know, so good to have you home. Like,
Yeah.
just
She was probably loving it.
she was pumped.
Yeah.
She was pumped for sure. But it took about a day or two. You know, I went out, had drinks with buddies, like caught up with all the people who are still in the old hometown there, and luckily some of my close friends were still there. And so it was like a day or two, and then I'm like, oh, fuck, you know, like this is not great. And I didn't know I was going through it, but man, was I depressed.
Yeah.
Like I was depressed because I had an overwhelming sense of failure.
Yeah.
And again, I was just kind of going through the motions, and I'm intensely introspective, but I wasn't like trying to degrade myself, you know, but it was just like, it was something that was just kind of there.
Right.
So it was a full month though when I was working through it. I got sick. So my body's just flushing all this pain and anxiety and everything that was going on, this sense of failure. I got really sick, really sick for like really sick for like 3 days, and then a lingering like 2-weeker that was just like hanging on. And I was drinking wine. I was eating pizza every night. Like my wife jokes, but she remembers the days when she would come over like the next morning, and I would just be in bed and I'd have the wine lip stain, you know? And it was disgusting.
Shout out to your wife though for rocking with you, man.
She really did.
Yeah.
I don't know I've never really asked her what was going through her mind at that time. I think I'm gonna go back and talk to her after this one, but she stuck with me, man, and she pushed me. But I think it was my mom that was just like, honey, you just need to get out of the basement. Like, you just need to go do something. And I was just like, all right. So the first thing I did to like get me moving was I started working in the yard. So as my parents were getting divorced, like the yard was falling apart. Like all the landscaping had been overgrown. It was just disgusting. And so the first thing I did was completely revamp the landscaping. You know, with my dad being a contractor, I've got some pretty good skills with my hands. And so I went through, chopped everything, planted new plants, put down sod, seeded, and then I got obsessed with it. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But I definitely had to have like the best lawn on the block while I'm living at home. Like if I'm going to be this guy living at home, like I gotta have some pride somehow. But then after a week of that, it took me a week, about 40 hours, and help from a friend to kind of work through it all. I was like, all right. I was just kind of like looking at everything, and I still had some virtual reality cameras that were left over from the venture, because we had both invested in it. And I'm like, I don't want to take away anything. He's going to keep doing it. I don't want to take anything that's going to hurt him, but I had like some little ones that we weren't really using. So I took those with me. I think it was like a Samsung Gear 360 is what it was called. And I would still keep it up a little bit on the online news and on the Twitter sphere. And I had realized that Google was rewarding local businesses with more traffic if they were utilizing their 360 photo capabilities, because they just come out with Street View and they wanted people to use it. So I was just like, all right, I'll just start walking into businesses and taking photos for them for free just to help them out and just kind of get me moving.
Right.
And the first place that I walked into was KB's Pizza and Sub Shop in Grand Haven, Michigan. And me and the owner started, shooting the shit a little bit. And she's like a 63-year-old grandmother. They thought that KB's Pizza and Sub Shop was going to be their retirement, but she was working in the business every day because it wasn't generating enough money, and they were getting close to going out of business. And that's kind of where I had that first conversation of, well, what are you doing? Like, what's happening in the business? What's happening with marketing and advertising? And I was having a sales meeting without realizing it.
Yeah.
And I was actually problem solving because I was genuinely trying to help this person,
right?
Because she was just such a sweet old lady. And I was learning about everything. And then by the end of that conversation, we had come to the conclusion of all the things that she needed to do. She needed a website. She needed to be on social media. She maybe needed to do some Google ads. And all these things I only kind of knew about. But after having this conversation with her, she's like, all right, well, how do we get this done? And I'm just like, well, you can pay me, I guess. And so we came to the conclusion that, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but if you give me this money, I will take it and I will learn how to do it. And if I can't learn how to do it, I will find somebody who can, and I will give them the money that you gave me. And she's like, all right, don't tell my husband, here's my last $3,000. And I was just like, okay, sounds great. And things kind of, escalated from there.
It's funny because with Deliver Anything Now, you mentioned something about not really doing the marketing and not really like wanting to spend much time thinking about that, but knowing that there was something that needed to happen on that front. I think your buddy kind of brought it to your attention that like we need to do some social media marketing or whatever. That was early social media times. But when you said that, I was like, wow, it's funny because like the exact problem that they needed to solve within their own business at 19, 20 is now a lot of what you do for your clients, right?
Yep.
So like,
oh wow, dude, I did not think about that at all.
Yeah.
That's a really good conclusion that you brought that.
I was like, huh, okay, that's gonna make sense later on. So with KB, you go on the path to figure out how to solve these problems, and at that point in time, you mentioned you didn't have the confidence. You just were kind of like, okay, like I'm gonna try to go figure this out. Talk me through the process of figuring it out for that business, and then when did the light go off in your mind that like, oh, like I can do this for a variety of clients, no matter what industry, what have you?
Yeah. So the process was not pretty, but it first started with me accepting the check, and I'm like, oh boy, I got to figure this out. But actually, it was only 2 blocks down from my mom's office. So I of course, like drove right over to her and I like showed her the check, like, Mom, look, I'm not a piece of crap.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm so proud of you, honey. Go figure it out.
Right.
And so then I went and bought a book. Couldn't even tell you the name of it, but it was basically how to run Google Ads. And it was a very insightful book. It was actually recommended to me by a friend at the time when I was just talking with him at the gym. And he was kind of like liking the space, this digital marketing space, but still had his, full-time job. Then I just spent hours on YouTube. I spent a lot of time on Squarespace. I had built our websites for the past businesses, either on WordPress or Squarespace. So like I knew a little bit, but at this point I really dove into it and I spent hours learning how to do Squarespace, which is click and drag. Like it's not super hard. What I was trying to do was like the cool stuff for the website though. Like you use a plugin, code a little bit, like all this stuff to really make the website come together. So I would say honestly no more than like 15 hours, like really diving into SEO, Google ads, social media ads, how to edit photos, because I was taking photos for her too and doing videos and content. So yeah, only maybe like 15 hours of like actual learning, and then everything else was just like hardcore application.
Right.
So then I was running her social media accounts. I had built our website. I had done all the on-site SEO. I didn't know how to do backlink or anything like that. But I knew that like it was important to have as many listings as possible on like Yelp and Bing, Google My Business. So I learned about all that stuff and was just applying it. And it was about 4 weeks in, she's like, hey, like business is picking up. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
all right, I like that. And then so I just started to continue to double down on everything. I'm like, I think we should probably try Google Ads because you're not ranking at the top yet for like pizza and subs in my area or near me. And I think I can buy some of these keywords. She's like, I don't have the budget. And I'm like, okay, no worries. Like, we'll just keep working on SEO. And secretly I went and, she didn't give me much money, but like I went and spent like $300 right away on those ads to try and generate business for her. And they started to. And so she doesn't know this to this day, but I use a good chunk of that money on Google Ads and just trying to get her results.
Right.
And then that just kept flowing. And then I was like, okay, I might have something here. And so then the next thing I did was my mom's business. And she had a crappy website from the same lady that tried to build my website for Deliver Anything Now, and it was just not good. And I was like, Mom, I think I need to redo your website. Like, I think I need to start working on your business. And she's like, yeah, honey, whatever you want. You just go for it, darling. And I was like, sweet. And then actually it was a very awkward conversation, like telling the lady that she had been using for her website for like years that like it's crap and I'm going to take over it. But I took over it and I applied all the same things from KB's Pizza and Sub Shop to her. And she got 30 new patients in the first month. And normally I think she'd probably be around 5 to 10.
Wow.
So that was like a big boost for her.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yes. So I was totally flexing at that point. I'm like, I got something. This feels good. And then I was just like, but I have no idea how to find clients. So my mom, though, is just the town gossip.
Telling everybody.
She's got everybody's ear. I mean, half the town goes to her. So like it's everybody knew when I was in trouble. They knew when I was grounded. They knew when I was doing good in school. And so the first thing my mom was doing is just talking about her amazing son, like, going out and doing some consulting.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting my next client from her and my biggest paying client at the time.
Yeah.
And that was really great. It was for a nonprofit who I still work for like pro bono to this day, 7 years later. And things went pretty well for them, but I didn't hit a lot of the goals I had set for them. And that was kind of like my first like little mini failure. Luckily, they were like the big things that they were focused on were taken care of, but the fundraising aspect kind of dropped the ball on.
Yeah.
But she was just such a sweet lady, Bobby Johnson, and we had such a good relationship. I took care of her house when she went out of town. Like she was just a great gal, and she was doing good things in the world. And then from there, though, this is when I had to go and face my fears of doing sales, and that's when I started cold entering or just cold knocking, door knocking, walking into local businesses and it's being like, hey, like, what are you doing for your marketing and advertising? Like your website sucks. And so I spent some time first researching which ones clearly had a bad online presence and then kind of going from there. And so that's how I got my next probably 5 clients, is just walking into places.
What was it like addressing that fear, knowing that it was a very real fear, sweaty palms, etc., but having to, and really like making the choice to like face it and go do it?
I just didn't. I know. Is it okay if I swear on here? I just realized I've been doing that. I was just like, you just can't be a pussy, dude. Like I don't like. we've got a lot of like a new culture that's coming out right now that's just like, you got to be freaking manly, but I kind of already had that back then where it's just like, just don't be a pussy at the very least,
Right.
And I just knew I couldn't be the guy that was afraid to talk to somebody. Like that was just messed up. Like I can't have that. Like that's not going to be a part of my life and my personality.
Right.
And then there was still the drive of I need to feel like I have success, because right now, like looking at where I'm at compared to all my friends who are making big bucks, 50, 60K, like out of college, or even out of high school, I'm like, I'm behind. Like
Right.
I'm right now at that point when I'm starting to have the door knock and like walking into business cold, I think I'm making maybe $2,500 a month.
Yeah.
And it's all going to me. I don't have to spend any money on anything. It's not like a business yet, but like it was nothing, And so I think it was just a little bit of like a feeling of inadequacy where I really needed to push myself to just get through it, and I didn't care if I made a fumbling mess out of myself. Give me one of these little, you can't see if you're listening to this, but wipe your hands on your pants,
Right.
make sure your hands are dry and going for the handshake. And then right before you get up at the very end, like, wipe your palms again, and then just try to keep your composure as your mind basically feels like it's going blank. Because if you ever had, I'm sure you've had 1,000 adrenaline rushes. It's a massive adrenaline rush, basically.
Right.
Nothing's going through your head except for a task on hand. You can't think creatively. It's very difficult. So yeah, it was just the idea, feelings of inadequacy, like wanting to be better, and just not wanting to be a pussy.
Yeah. And do you remember that first cold enter? Do you remember coming out of there and at all having a sense of like, that wasn't as bad as I made it to be in my head? Or was it awful?
It was awful, but I mean, coming out of it, I was always glad that I went into it, and that's what I really tried to remember and attach myself to, is like, all right, yeah, that sucked, but you just got a client out of it. And even if you didn't, like, that was good. Okay, we got another rep in, So I'm starting at this point, like maybe after 5 door knocks, I'm like starting to evolve a little mini sales culture in my head of like, go out and get him, dude. Like,
Right.
Get out and slay. Be that lion today.
Right. Yeah, but it works. I mean, it's like the self-talk is critical, especially going into something that's maybe not the most comfortable thing for you.
Yeah, self-talk has always been a big part of my life. I don't know if it comes inherently for individuals, but my mom has it too. Like, massive inner dialogue, constantly hyping myself up. And now has gone into a whole nother level where it's like, we'll probably get into later, but a very esoteric approach to life where, my thoughts create reality. So I'm going to be very careful with those.
Yeah. So that was very early in your business. How many years have you been in business now with the creative?
It'll be 7 years coming up in March here. So we're getting pretty close.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that first and foremost.
Thank you.
But what's it been like really just continuing to build something, and what have been some of the growing pains, the wins, and some of the challenges that you faced along the way?
Yeah, so it was a referral-based business for 90% of our clientele for 5 years straight. And we built nearly a 7-figure agency just on that. So like I really focused on making sure that we had something worthy of people buying. The worst thing that I felt like I could ever do is not give somebody results, because it's a very personal thing at that point where you just yourself, or you and your girlfriend, or you and 1 or 2 other employees. Like, this is you. So there's not like some big facade where this is Amazon, and if they don't deliver your package, like whoop-de-doo, they'll replace it tomorrow and you don't really think anything of it. This is who I am. This is my quote unquote brand, but this is my character. So really focus on that. Some of the other pain points were bringing my girlfriend to work with me and for me. I considered her a business partner just because of everything that she did, but she came and worked for me for free for a little bit. After I got like 10 clients, I couldn't manage all the social media accounts, and she was just starting to get involved in the influencer stuff, which now she is an influencer. And so she found that fun, so she did it for free. That taught me, and then when I hired her full time and we split the revenue down the middle for a long time, that was very difficult, but very, very good, because it taught us to argue efficiently, and it taught us to not really invest ourselves in our arguments, I guess. What I'm trying to say is bickering became a thing for sure, but like there were no real deep-seated issues.
Right.
We had to strategically approach every argument, because you can't walk into a client's office while having beef with your business partner or like girlfriend. Like, you can't do that. Like, You've got to figure it out before you go anywhere. So it taught us to argue fast, efficiently, get to the bottom of the problem, then move on to the next thing. So that was a big challenge. Getting interns and real employees outside of your wife and girlfriend, that's that's a whole new beast. Learning to lead,
Yeah.
that's really something that I'm only just now starting to understand. And then building systems and processes, that was my biggest thing.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, I hired generalists because they could just do what they needed to do, and I wouldn't have to manage them. That was kind of the point. I don't want to do all this work. Help me out. I don't want to have to manage you. Figure it out. That process, that doesn't work. Only to a certain point. And then if you want to exceed, 7 figures and you want to get into the 8-figure range, like you have to have processes, you have to have standard operating procedures, you have to have a flow map that shows somebody how to make the proper decision when every single obstacle that comes up. And then, so that's one that I've faced over the past year. And then 2 is just straight up running the organization and being a good leader and finding the right people to come and be the enforcers.
Right.
So
how many employees do you have now?
We have 20 right now, and we will have 24 by this end of this month.
That's awesome.
So we're hiring about 1 a week now. Things are really growing fast.
And what kind of capacities are you hiring folks?
Say it again?
What positions are you hiring?
Oh, okay. So sales guys, actually, so yeah, it'd be 21 this week, actually. So sales guys, we are bringing in media buyers for Facebook, Instagram, and Google ads. And then right now we're also hiring client success engineers, which is our term for an account manager. But they really are responsible for driving the marketing and advertising success of our individual clients. And then those client success engineers manage/work with our media buyers, or our campaign connoisseurs, as we call them. Thank you, ChatGPT, for that. Campaign connoisseurs, our SEO specialists, and our video editing team. So they kind of like manage that and just bring everything together so that the campaigns perform well.
Very cool. So in terms of building some of those SOPs, and then also just like really learning how to effectively lead, what have been some of the most important things in terms of, I'll break it up into 2 questions. Like, how do you build an SOP if you're not the expert on the procedure? Yeah,
so that luckily I was the expert on most of the procedures. It's getting to a point now where I'm just kind of like, oh wow, glad you know how to do that, But yeah. In the very beginning, so probably, honestly, it was October of last year up until maybe March, and it's still continuing. Of course, every day there's new SOPs being created, but the hard hitting portion was last year, October to March, I would say. And that was painstaking. I had to write down, first of all, I had to go in and redo client fulfillment on my own so that I could remind myself of every little step that I had to do, every little thing that I had to think about, and then write it all down. And then I had to go and create a Loom video. You know what those are? Like record screen and face. Do a Loom video as well on yet another client fulfillment process, the same process. So I'd have to do it twice over to then show what it looks like on video. And on my screen, so that if anybody has questions, I can just do a follow along, basically. And then so that was one. That's for all the things that are like set in stone, like everything that has to be done to onboard a client, run their marketing campaigns effectively, make sure that the client is getting results. And then there's a whole nother portion where like there's just questions that people are going to have for me. So in the very beginning, while I was doing these SOPs, I was just answering people's questions in Slack, like sending them back and forth. But then I realized, another client success engineer is asking me the same question. So like, okay, this is not efficient. So from that point on, anytime somebody asked me a question, I would think about how to properly answer it. I would record a Loom video showing how I was doing it and how I came to this conclusion, or how to go and find the right answers for a client. And then I'd send that to that person that asked the question and say, here, watch this. And if they figured it out, I created a good SOP, and I say, send it to somebody else and see if it makes sense to them. And if we did it, great. Add it to the library. We're going to use that going forward. And now we have a massive Loom library in addition to a Notion board that they can go and just type in any question they have, and it'll bring up a video and show them what they need to go and do. So that was a painstaking process. And that was a period of time where I was doing, 16-hour days again, which I hadn't done in a while. So it was a little overwhelming.
And then the other question was on the leadership side. That's something that sounds new. You were leading, your pledges and whatnot to a degree, but now in a real business as you see it, what is your leadership style like, and what are some of the most important things for you from a leadership perspective?
Yeah, I think I don't know yet. I think I don't know what my leadership style is. I think I'm still finding my voice. It's a process, man. And I don't think I'm going to know it for maybe another 6 months or longer, but I can tell you what I do right now. And it's just like, when we first started bringing all these people into the collective as team members, I just didn't even really know them. So the first step was just like taking the time to get to create a relationship with them. And what's so interesting too is I hate to quantify these kind of things, but I will say that truthfully, once I started to develop these relationships with these employees, the accuracy of their work, the drive behind what they're doing, and the fulfillment for the clients got so much better. And I feel it's like before they were just a part of like a stupid, or like this is just their job, you know, but now I feel like when I created these relationships with them, they're like, this has some meaning behind it.
Right.
So there's that. I also try to instill all of my values in them. So for the first year and a half to 2 years doing Creators Consulting at the time, now Creators Collective, it was all just about making money. Like, how can I make more money? And then I was like, okay, well, you make 6 figures now, so what are we doing here? And I was just like, all right, really dove into what's the inspiration behind this. I fulfilled some of this inadequacy, you know, what's next? And that's where I really realized, like, the whole point behind doing this is to give business owners something that they can be proud of, to alleviate them of financial stress so that they can sit back and relax and be nice to their kids. You know, I saw the stress from my parents. My mom did a great job. Dad, not so much. I saw the stress that they went through and how it affected us. So I don't want that to happen in their families.
Right.
And when they have something that they can be proud of, money is not an issue. And they can go now and affect other individuals and just spend money. I mean, just keep money moving, right?
Right.
They're going to be happier individuals. They're going to go ahead and say nicer things to their friends, their family, the random person on the street. They're more likely to bless somebody by buying their groceries if they have the money and the capacity to do that.
Right.
So what it really came down to is becoming a rock into a pond and creating a ripple effect. Like, I'm going to go out and do little cells of change and create little cells of change. Create individuals who are more positive, and kinder, and get that to just try and radiate to everybody. Because once you can take a business owner out of that fight or flight mentality, it just changes everything. You know, it did for me too, and it took a long time to get there. So I just wanted to, like, go ahead and create that change in the world, because I am quite the conspiracy theorist, and there's not much I can do at the high levels, right, to go ahead and change where I think the world is going. But I can put people in the state of mind where they can make the best decisions for themselves and for their family, and usually that has pretty good effects that, you know, spread throughout. And so I try to instill those values into my employees. I don't even like calling them employees; they're just my team members. They're my homies, dude. Yeah, they're people. I don't know. It's kind of weird to say that, but say that they're employees, but nonetheless. So I try to instill that in them, because I want them to have the same thoughts and process. Like, I want them to have the same view of life as me. And I don't want to be a dictator about it, but I want to, like, try and show them, like, trust me, this is really good. Like, you should definitely listen to me.
Right.
And so I just try to show them through example, and then just trying to be a nice person and guide them down the right path. I have a very hands-off approach. I don't like to micromanage, and that's why I hired a chief operations officer. So she comes in, she does the enforcement, and she's also a very sweet gal. So it's like a nice combination where it's like, you know, she's a 5'1", girl, like, and she's pretty. So, like, it's easy for them to receive criticism from her. Whereas if I'm coming at them, I also know how to destroy people emotionally. So, like, I don't want to cross that line.
Right.
Instead, I can keep a good relationship with them and tell them, like, hey, like, you got this, man. Like, do what my mom did for me.
Right.
Like, give them the self-esteem and the confidence that they need. Like, you listen, dude, you got this. I know you're capable of this. So go out there and get it. By the way, how was your weekend?
Right.
You know? And then let her, like, if they need to enact if they need to enact some disciplinary action on them, then I'm just not a part of that.
Right.
You know, like, I'm a little removed for it. They probably deserve it, but I'm going to be there to support them through that, as if this is their own challenge in life. This is their own little business, because they kind of own their own little businesses. These sectors where they're helping 10 businesses at once. You know, how can I support them to make sure that they're creating that change and that effect?
Dude, that's a beautiful why for your business.
Yeah.
I think people care so much more about why you do what you do than the actual what. And so to hear you talk about, you know, truly actually making the lives of the business owners better beyond just, like, the revenue side of things is really cool. And I think too, from a leadership perspective, people just want to feel valued. I mean, like, they really just want to feel valued. They want to feel like their management cares about the work that they're doing, and they're seen. Like, it's all cliche stuff, but cliches are all true to a degree.
They are.
So that's great. And I think it's really cool that you talk about how you're learning through the process, and, like, you don't have it all figured out, but you're trying to figure out what works.
So far from figuring it
Yeah,
out. Like,
yeah.
It's a constant process.
It's great. Man, I had another question that left me. I guess long term, like, what are the goals of the Creators Collective?
Yeah, so I want to affect more people in a much larger way. You can only do it so much through advertising and client acquisition into your own agency. And so what we're looking to do is, I mean, honestly, we need to 5X where we're at right now to be a big player. And then from there, aka in the next 6 months, though, we are going to start acquiring other agencies, and we're going to find complementary agencies. So I want to go out and get the agency that is really good at doing SEO for lawyers.
Okay.
I want to go and get an agency that is really good at running Facebook and Instagram ads for. We do a lot of them, so I'm trying to think of one that we don't do for excavating companies. And bring them all together so that we have a collective that has every single small business, industry, and vertical taken care of.
Yeah.
So that anybody can come to us and we can send them to the right division and get them taken care of. Because I saw this one agency, Marketing 360, and I've had so many clients of mine now come to me from them because they're just a big marketing agency, and they just eat them. They just take $5,000 a month away from them, eat them up, and spit them out, and like nothing ever happens. They just basically rob them. I'm like, I don't want that. Like, I really want these people to be able to have success. So I want to do what they did, but I want to do it right. So I want to acquire people who are already specialists and having success in that industry, instead of me having to go through a learning curve to learn what they already know.
Right.
So we just bring them into the collective, and we've got a massive agency. We may eventually exit that. I have some big goals that I have written down. I just don't know if those big goals are going to be coming in from, yearly revenue or from an exit. So we'll see what happens. But I think I would like to maintain some level of control over it, just to make sure that it doesn't get a hold of, investors that are just looking to pump money out of it. It needs to be not just it needs to not just be a machine for profit. It needs to be a vehicle for change.
Yeah.
Every dollar is a unit of change. So I want as many of those as possible so that I can affect change in the direction that I think is, good for the world. Is that the beginning of every dictator ever? I'm not sure, but
that's awesome. I remembered my question. Being an entrepreneur, running a business, we talked about this a little bit at the very beginning, but how do you manage your time in a way that's effective and hold yourself accountable to getting all the various things done on a daily basis that you need to get done?
Yeah, I still struggle with that a little bit, but there is a overwhelming sense of guilt. If I don't go and do what I know I need to do, then there are thousands of people that are going to be affected by that. So I say guilt. That's too negative of a term, but it is an obligation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's an obligation. Today I told you I woke up at 7:45. And I felt kind of bad about that, because like I could have gotten some stuff done. Like, even if it's me working out in the morning, I have to do that so that I'm on top of my game for everybody else I'm going to be with that day. And everyone that I'm going to be strategizing with or coming up ideas for, I have to be on top of it. So, did I answer your question completely? I think I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent. What was the question again?
I asked you, how do you hold yourself accountable?
Oh, yeah, it's an obligation.
Yeah.
I don't need to. It's just there. There are a few little techniques. Like, sometimes I'll set a timer if I need to get a task done and move on to the next one. If I've got a really big one, I'll set timers so I just move through them and I have to get it done in this period of time, and then we'll go on to the next thing. But yeah, I mean, in addition to making sure that things go right for our clients, I feel obligated towards that, but I also feel obligated to my team to fulfill the needs that they have from me so that they can then do that for their clients. So yeah,
absolutely.
It's just an obligation, my friend.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I always ask my guests, if you had a piece of advice to leave the audience with, what would it be?
It would be to live in the wish fulfilled. So the Bible mentions to walk by faith and not by sight, and that's a very simplified way to describe living in the wish fulfilled. I have everything that I need, and I have my Ferrari. I don't, by the way, but I have my Ferrari. I have my house. I have a happy relationship with my wife. I have all of my closest friends that are invested in me. I have a happy brother, 2 happy brothers, a happy sister. I'm living in the existence that all of these things are already true. And through that, we know, well, let me back up a little bit. We know that imagination is the creator for all things in our reality. This is a mental world. And everything that's ever been created came first from the imagination. So we know that it leads us. So every day, through self-talk and through just straight up imagining myself driving my Ferrari and in my helicopter going to Fredericksburg, I'm there. I'm already there. And that helps me deal with the stress. It helps me deal with challenges because I know that the solutions have already come to me. They have already been revealed to my team. I am simply going down the river, enjoying the flow, nice lazy river. I'm enjoying the flow and then looking up at the trees, AKA the signs, or the rocks in the riverbed, the challenges, and I'm just going, acknowledging them, and then looking for the solution to either those challenges or whatever it is that I'm coming up against. It's already there. So live in the wish fulfilled and all will be taken care of.
Dude, I love that. And I should shut up, but
no, this is good.
I just would like to like piggyback on that. You're saying essentially that like there's no need or yearning for more because you already have it all, and you're just enjoying the process and the journey to the destination because you walk by faith and not by sight, and you know that it's taken care of.
Yeah, because when you have too strong, like living in the wish fulfilled is already fulfilling the desire. Mm-hmm. If you have the desire, then what you're doing is you're creating a space, you're creating a vacuum that you're going to be sucked into of always wanting to have that desire. Right? Mm-hmm. So you are creating a state of mind and an existence where you're always in need. And instead, if you're living in the wish fulfilled, your desires have been met, you know? And through that, though, that's actually creating a true desire, like an actual pathway to receive what it is that you want. So it's a backwards way of looking at it, but it's the correct way because, like I said, you know, everything comes from the imagination, and your self-talk is going to affect all this. So if you're worried about money, then you will always be worried about money. You have to change your mindset around it. And then also, you know, just as touch further on money is flowing and it loves to move. So all you have to do is stick your hand out and grab it, you know, but don't be afraid to let it go too, you know, and it's with all things though. It's just let it flow through you. You are just a vehicle for change and for observing what's happening in this universe. So just sit and observe and enjoy.
Dude, I'm ready to run through a brick wall.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Dude, I love it. Seriously though, but man, that was great. And, I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely, man. We're going to have to find a way to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get her done.
Yeah, and to the audience, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Walk On Mentality podcast, and we will see you on the next one.
Deuces. You can cut that last part out if you want.
Do you have to press stop?
Yeah. Oh, let's do that real quick.
Dude, that was...